So let's dive straight into this. Right? The discussion of today is the collaboration of the public and the private sector and really integrating lifestyle, other developments. And I'm taking the role, which is actually my role, as lifestyle operating company. So we have private sector, public sector, operator. We really dive into this immediately because it means something different for everybody. So starting, Mahmoud, with you, collaborating private sector government, what does that actually mean to you?
Thank you, Marloes, and good morning all. I think that's an interesting concept of public and private partnership. People have a very narrow view of what that is. I think in our sector today, I mean, generally speaking, they immediately think of infrastructure projects and concessions, etc. Whereas in our sector, which is much more of a service industry, it is much more nuanced. So today, as the government, we don't necessarily, other than obviously the big PIF projects, we don't own any legacy tourism assets that are going to be quote unquote privatized. Mm-hmm. So our role today in the public-private partnership, in the concept of a public-private partnership, is to make sure that we are working very closely with the private sector to create this sustainable, investable tourism environment in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And that means working with them, with the private sector on regulation, working with them to facilitate and help bring things together. And as your announcement evidenced this morning, this was a process that we worked with you on for a while. It's all your work, and we just sort of filled in the gaps where you needed us. And I think that's the sort of partnership that we can offer with the private sector to help realize those investments and help them see the light.
Thank you very much. Mohammed, I'm going to give this over to you immediately because private sector, you've been investing as a company in real estate and hospitality for a while. You've set up the hospitality arm for aims to really take that to a different level. What does that collaboration mean for you and in your developments?
Thank you, Marloes. I think this is a very important issue. We have been hearing this for the last probably 3 decades or 4 decades, the partnership, and we haven't realized that until probably lately, the last 5 years, and since the Vision 2030 has been launched. We truly see now that type of partnership. Still, I think some of the details need to be somehow aligned between the two parties, the information, the flow of information. But again, I think it's created opportunities that have never been there before, and also created a way that we work and we collaborate in both sectors, private and public, to do a destination or a project or a program, and that's really have been really missing for a long time. And I think this one is going to be the driver for creating more tourism flow, first of all, and also the hospitality product that will match that demand in the future.
Thank you very much. And Mahmoud, I can see that when you say the initiatives that have been created, I'm going to come and I'm going to pick that up immediately after. Elias, for you, still the easy question, what does that look for you, collaboration between private sector and government?
So what we've seen so far from all the offerings of the public sector, from the Ministry of Tourism, from TDF, and the regional authorities, being the royal commissions, the general authorities, compared to any other market I personally have worked in, I think it's beyond what any private sector entity would expect. You know, I wouldn't go and start, nagging and asking for, no. But what really matters is visibility. I think if I want to give one comment where we lack, momentum, is visibility, because all of these projects came at once, came very quickly, and we need some data to know where to start, given that most of us in the public sector have limited resources. So if this mega project or if this destination goes live next year or in 3 years, and we're fully focused on it, it makes a big difference on our overheads, for instance. One other overarching item, I think, for all segments of the industry, and since we're covering lifestyle today, is people. The qualifications of the local, there's no alternative to equipping the local service industry to step up to the challenge. We can take some lessons from the past, maybe not so relevant, but for me it gives a good indicator. Uber, before the age of Uber, taking a trip from a hotel to a meeting or to a restaurant or to a mall was disastrous in Saudi. The moment Uber came and the platform was offered, a decent platform was offered for the Saudi youth, we saw that commuting became an experience, a lovely experience, and you would meet the young Saudi who's a student and working extra time, a father in between jobs, a lady who's taking an attempt at the first job. Also McDonald's, when McDonald's started training Saudi youth maybe 15 years ago, people thought they're taking a big step. It was a bit of a long shot. And now I think we no longer speak of Saudization. I love to see the tourism industry not mentioning Saudization anymore, because it should become obsolete at some point.
So then I pose the next question immediately to you, right? With all of the initiatives that are there, and Mahmoud, coming back to you, is with the initiatives that are there, with Uber being here, with all of the initiatives taking place, with the development of the young people, what are you doing today to accelerate in hospitality and taking that to the next level?
So at RAFAL, we launched 2 hotels in the last 10 years. The most recent was delivered 5 years ago or 6 years ago. That was Ascot by RAFAL, the first of its kind in terms of service residences. We've already contributed assets, income-generating hospitality assets, to local REITs in excess of 2 billion riyals. And I believe from an investment asset management point of view, putting income-generating assets on the market and being at the forefront of this activity paves the way for others as well. So this is from an investment point of view. Going forward, we see lots of hotels being planned. And as a local mid-scale developer, we're looking at the new entry point. This is why we're collaborating with companies like Kerten, who are trying to push the edge for more sensible, more homegrown concepts that would fill a gap in the market, specifically in Riyadh. Urban resorts, we're trying to look for more local experiences in what we offer.
Thank you. Mahmoud, you've taken a lot of initiatives, you know where the gaps are, and you're working on future initiatives. Without it sounding very visionary, could you be very practical with regards to what you've put in place and what you are putting in place at the moment for the private sector to really accelerate new type of products?
So I want to actually echo something Elias mentioned. When we first started, one of the key challenges we identified was that visibility, was the clarity in what is going on in the sector. And what we've been working on for the last 2 years is making sure that that clarity is at a much higher level than it was, being very transparent about what the government is spending on in terms of these giga projects, what the components are going in, where the opportunities lie, and then identifying the white space underneath and outside those government investments that require investment. Then we moved on to, and that's an ongoing process, and we're developing our methods, our tools, to make sure that transparency continues and improves, or that visibility continues and improves. Then we obviously started on the facilitation piece, and we did that for 2 reasons. The first reason, of course, is investors needed help. The second reason was a little bit more selfish, because when we facilitated, we identified what some issues were or where some of the bottlenecks were. Some of them we expected, others we were surprised by because we didn't think that's where the issues were. But the main reason for doing this was to actually go away and solve for root cause. And then specifically, we started working on things where we knew that there was, so we mentioned Saudization. We mentioned that we know that there's a human capital gap. So the ministry has a dedicated deputyship for developing that human capital in the sector. They've been training people. The net result of all of this is, over the last 2 years, we've seen a large number of investments come in, which is fine. A lot of these were legacy investments that were coming to fruition today. What is more impressive is that what we're seeing between now and the next 3 to 4 years is actually more than double what has come in the last 3 to 4 years. So, and this is all, I'm only speaking about the pure private sector money. And where we're seeing a transition from investors looking at single assets to a portfolio of assets. So we're seeing a major shift in how people are viewing the sector, what the risk appetite is for the sector. There's a lot more to do, but we're already seeing the positive effects of some of these things. And again, just to go back, it's facilitating for making sure that we have the right human capital in the market, making sure that we have the right regulation. We've recently revised all of the regulations relating to the Ministry of Tourism, and you will see an increase in quality, you will see an increase in accessibility for these regulations in terms of how they're written, what's required of the private sector, what's required of the government. It is a much clearer baseline from which to work from. And again, that's sort of brought in all of this new investment and has brought in this new momentum.
I'm going to take that to us for a moment. So you alluded to the press release that we got published this morning, The Collective by Kerten Hospitality. Sounds as an advertisement, but I think there's something really critical about the initiative, which is we've been coming to the kingdom for years, and one of the key parts that we believe we should play as an operating company is we deal with government sector because there is opportunities, because there is changes of regulations, because there is lands, because there is a need. We built the relations with the private sector, and our job is to bring these projects and these lifestyle projects to life. What we can see is a single owner of a single asset, the support and the marketing, and you can say, I have a project in Abou once, you can say it twice, but you can't say it 25 times. When you say, I am part of the collective, I am part of an initiative that supports like-minded projects, like-minded investors, brings that together and makes people feel part of something, right? If that is in new and upcoming destinations, everybody has the same kind of pain points or excitement. You share that, you accelerate, and you actually have currently 12 projects in parallel that are being developed and that will all open pretty much at the same time. Versus, you have a great vision for 25 projects over 10 years. And we've worked with you really hard in doing that, but we've worked with both of you really hard on actually having projects in this portfolio. And so, Mohammed, I'm going to pose this to you, which is, you work for a family office that has been there for so long and it has done so much good, coming in with this different kind of mindset, bringing lifestyle, right? All of a sudden talking about destinations that haven't been developed or truly looked at for so many years. How do you bring that across? How do you go to your investment committee and say, actually, guys, or team, how do we do this? Do we do this?
Great. Just before answering that, I just want to make sure, just add to Mahmoud's statement first about the collaboration between the private sector. And we are very much involved historically in Mecca and Medina, and we are in the Hajj and Umrah business. And we haven't seen such of collaboration that happened even between government agencies. Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of Hajj are working together for the first time, probably effectively. They have been working before, but now, and we could see now, are supported also by the Saudi Authority of Tourism, the Saudi Tourism Authority, and that has already, let's say, enabled and already inflow of the visitor to Mecca, huge demand, and that really bringing other hospitality products that other than the usual. And I think, and again, Taif and Jeddah would be probably benefiting from this. So this is where I think the market and the demand really dictates how businessmen then move. Okay, and this is where I come today, because there was nothing about talking about destination, or we're looking now into changing a very historical high-end palace in Taif to a tourism accommodation, and that was never been there. I don't think there is no data about the benchmarking and houses, but we know that it will work because there is a gap everywhere in those sectors. So I think that is where the private sector has benefited from this, and investors now are rethinking, not the traditional way, but to move ahead and make sure that to see where are the dots that need to be improved, where we can convert the assets that we have that we never. You said about Abha, and I'm sure Al-Baha farms now are being marketed as a product, and we're looking into those sort of products. So yes, I think the mindset of investors have changed.
And so you feel this in your boardroom? You feel that it's easier to convince the investors or the investment committee to actually look at alternative asset classes?
I'm sorry, I missed the first point.
In your investment committee,
yeah,
in your board, do you feel it's easier to convince them today to go into in investing in alternative assets?
Being an executive, I think my job, first of all, has to educate the board members, stakeholders on this issue. And we have been successful in doing partnerships everywhere, right? International expertise, local expertise. So I think that is part of the management role. And yes, the answer is yes. Now, if you do that, then it's easier, and people can see the change. Again, the board or the committee are also they're resident of Saudi. They are local. They know what's going on, and just they want to be led, and they are excited about it. So this is my role.
Thank you. Elias, RAFAL is known for corely or mainly investing in Riyadh or key cities. Diversification of asset portfolio today is a key topic, simply because if it's not diversified and everybody does the same, the moment everything opens, it's a pure competition on rate. And if that is rental prices or that's room rates, it doesn't matter. What do you do, and I think not just you personally, because you're quite forward-thinking, how do you convince your board and your investment committee to do something alternative to keep a diversified portfolio and we play into kind of where the government is stimulating the investments?
Thank you for this question, Marius. I think it paves the way for to share some of the challenges we face, and particularly scalability. As any developer who's passionate for what we do and passionate for the future of Saudi Arabia, I would love to be developing so many experiences in remote areas, because myself, I travel and I explore them. But to sustain an operation in secondary cities or remote areas, it's not that simple. So one of the issues you need to cater for a boardroom is scalability and sustainable growth in a certain region. So we are looking into models and dealing with operators who know how to manage such assets. I mean, I would love to see more conversion opportunities. I know they're very limited. I was involved in the conceptualization of boutique in a previous life, and that was the concept. And we did benchmarks on similar experiences, mainly in Spain and Portugal, where they converted similar assets, palaces, but there they were present in almost every village. So you could create a network, and because you need scalability, you need consistency. We are yet to see similar experiences here, and I know it's not easy. It's not a problem that the Ministry of Tourism can solve. It's an urban issue. So we are looking into better alternatives, glamping. I think when the coast opens up, and maybe this is one item we can discuss now, the Riviera is still dormant. And I think once we see the marinas activated, I think the boating life can be a good replacement for the palaces you see in the middle of nowhere in Europe, for instance.
Thank you very much. Mahmoud, would you like to take this?
Yeah, I think, so to build on something that was mentioned by both Mohammed and Elias, it is our job at the ministry to give them the tools to go and convince their board and their shareholders. And that's something that we are striving to do. So making that information available, making sure that it is of the right quality, that is a very critical thing. I'm a former banker. If you make a decision based on bad data, even if it's a good decision, you will have a bad result. So we need to make sure that the data is right. And it is at a very, very high level today. We just need to make sure that it is as accessible as possible. I think we can't paint the private sector in one brush. So, for example, you mentioned one of the key challenges is the conversion of assets, and we agree. But the root cause, as we see it, is a little bit different. Is that you mentioned in Europe and other parts where you will have these little assets in every village, etc. Historically, we don't have these assets. They just don't exist.
Exactly.
We don't have these old inns. We don't have these old palaces in these remote areas because of the way, historically this country was built and structured. However, there are other opportunities. We've seen different investors take a different approach to their views on these destinations. Some people are looking at pure single assets, one at a time. Others are looking at big portfolios. Some are addressing one market segment. Another segment or another bunch of investors are looking at a different segment. It's been very interesting for us to be on this side of the fence, to see the variety of interest that is coming in and the very different approaches. One of the beauties of being a nascent sector in an economy such as the kingdom is that there is no one answer. There are multiple paths to get to what is ultimately our target, is to have like I said, a sustainable, investable sector. And many people will look at this in a very different way. What I can say is the previous model is probably falling out of favor, where you focus just on the big cities, you're looking at these just pure corporate hotels, and they're quite boring. So we're now introducing lifestyle, there's a new product, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of boutiques. And the beauty of this is, in some of the riskier segments, the government, either through the PIF or some of the other authorities, are seeding these sectors by actually creating that demand, creating the product, creating the benchmark. Now, I have no doubt that the private sector will ultimately overtake all of these government projects in terms of quality, speed of execution, cost efficiency, but somebody needs to take that risk. And for a lot of the cases, it is us as the government.
And so is that what you call new destination enablement or development, or does that go even one step further?
So let's take two hypothetical examples.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at a giga project which is built in the middle of nowhere with no infrastructure, no power, no water, no utilities, no airport, no roads, no private sector investor in their right mind will put any money there. Yet we have a need. So these are the types of projects that the government has taken on board. Then you have the existing cities and towns, which have the infrastructure, and the infrastructure generally is solid. I mean, there will be some elements of connectivity, there will be some elements of quality, there will be some elements of capacity, nothing that can't be addressed through dedicated planning. And this is where the private sector needs to play, because and for them this is the natural habitat, because they have a captive audience within that captive area. They will have clear data on visitation numbers, etc. They will have historic data based on the product that's coming, which is where we step in. They will see future market growth. So there are two layers to how we're developing these destinations.
So Elias, based on this, what else would you need more than what Mahmoud has just set out to actually make that next step? I told you the first question was easy.
No, see, the baseline is clear. And
Yeah.
I think this is what Mahmoud is referring to. The trends are just picking up.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of time for the momentum to pick.
Okay. Mohammed, I see you. Yeah.
It just happened last week. I was in Al Ula for the first time. And my colleagues in Kerten or in Royal Commission of Al Ula or the development company, they've been asking me to come over and so on and see it. And I had a challenge to come back for an important meeting, okay, because there was no flights. And I was asking them, guys, then how solve it? So it's basically probably the airline will not move until there is a traffic flow, and then traffic flow will not come until if there is no. So it's the egg and the chicken. So these are the things that need to be somehow detailed. It's very, very promising. I've seen a lot in that, a lot of potential in that area, and that also applies to so many destinations, which I think the government would probably take a role and say, yes, we will support this. Yes, we will subsidize the airline traffic or even railway to that destination. I had to drive 4 hours to Medina and then take a train to come back to Jeddah. So it's been a long flight. But this is something I think can probably check some of the dots on those destinations.
Thank you. And I think it's a great example of there's so many different destinations. And if you look at my personal case, I've traveled from Abha to Baha to Yambu to Umlush by road, by train, by plane. Then Alula, I don't know how many times. I can probably give you better restaurant recommendations than a lot of people locally. But I think what's really, all of our jobs, I think, is connecting it together. I think the one thing with regards to lifestyle development, and that's also the kind of part that I would like to end with, is when we talk about lifestyle, we often talk about product and design. Lifestyle is really creating a destination that people want to be part of, something that makes people curious, something that includes a sense of smell, a sense of taste, a sense that you cannot necessarily put in a box. And I think with the next level, and that's also why I think this conversation is so important, because for a long time in the industry, we've been talking product. And Saudi Arabia having a blank sheet of paper can go so far beyond product alone, architecture, interior design, and anything else. It's how do you create these experiences? How do you integrate this? How do you create that ecosystem? Again, we brought to life the collective because we can accelerate and enable that ecosystem. We bring Experience International and get that really into the system and collaborate and connect that. So just as we have a second left, one sentence on where do you see the future going? Where do you see really this great, please guys, do this or not?
Sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
So, one sentence. I think for me, the key thing is that this is a nascent sector with huge growth potential. The numbers we've seen, I mean, last year, the Kingdom achieved 90+ million visitors. spend was well over $20 billion just from what was primarily domestic tourism. We are working to make sure that we are bringing the high-spend international visitors. We're making sure that we're working with the destination owners. So the future is bright. We are willing to work hand in hand with the private sector to realize our dreams, to realize our ambitions for this sector. And ultimately, we will turn the kingdom into a top 5 destination globally by 2030. That is no doubt. And we will work with the private sector to do this because ultimately, this is your sector.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. I think it's a great way to end with, and I think we can really pick up on future projects, on more to come. But thank you for being here, and thank you for being so active. Thank you for listening.